Now, I've been talking a lot about comparative measuring, so I hope everybody's getting that. And we're going to talk about checking relationships too. And what that basically means is we are checking things against the subject matter. So we have to set up this page, and we want to make sure that we can fit the wingspans in. And I know when you look at the drawing or the photograph, you're going to think that the bird body is actually longer than the wings, which is incorrect. So if you measure that and you measure it comparatively, checking it against the body of the bird, you'll see that actually the wingspan is longer than the body of the bird. And that's important because if you start out drawing the body of the bird, you're going to end up short and you're not going to have room for the wings. Okay, there's how long the wings are. Now, how long is that body compared to the wings? And right where my lead is about where the pencil, the wingspan is. And you can see right here, and I would say maybe that's a half a head. So that's probably a half a head shorter than your wingspan. So I'm going to measure this. And I'm right here at the end of my pencil before it at the sharpened area. And I'm going to say, I want my head to start right about here. So make a mark for your head. That doesn't mean that's where the head is actually going to be. It's just the level on the paper where I want it to be, so I can mark where the body's going to be. So right there, and half a head, half a head, maybe that's a half an inch. So we'll make it a half an inch shorter. So we're going to put there. So that should be pretty close. And again, you can see that the bird is not a straight, it's an angle, but we need to find out where to start. So how long is this one wing compared to the other wing? This wing is, you can see my measurement. I'm going to apply it to that wing. It's actually almost an inch compared to this drawing, shorter than the other wing. So if we know where the wings are going to stop and start, then we'll know where to place the body. So we're going to say, I'm just going to make some marks and then I'm going to check them. That's where my body starts. I'm going to measure it and take it over here. And that is approximately right, because that is, right here is this wing. So I got it pretty close. You can eye it, but it's also a good idea to check those comparatively, measuring them against the others. And see how much shorter this wing is compared to this wing. And if you know hummingbirds, the reason why it looks shorter is because they actually go rounded. They swirl like this when they're flying. And this one is actually bent backwards, and this one's probably coming forward. So it's shorter because of the angle and the way it's flying. All right, so I'm going to say I've got this one a little higher, and this one's a little lower. You can see where that line comes across. Kind of measuring it off the sides of the paper. And this one is quite a bit lower. How much lower is it than the one here? If I use the edge of the paper, this one is that far down. And this one comes almost twice as much. It's almost twice as far down as the other one. So that's pretty close right there. Don't worry about all these marks you're making. We can erase those at the end. And I said my head is here. It's not centered. You can see where the wings are, so you know it's not centered. And I always do these sharp little lines as I'm drawing in. They're real sketchy. They're not rounded. They're just very simply drawn in quick. So we're going to say basically that's where the bird body is. Here's the two wings. One's longer, one's shorter. Now we have to figure out about halfway down that page. But we know that the body is not straight down. It goes at an angle. So if you lay a pencil down, you could lay a pencil here, and you could look at it according to the picture. And it's going to be over probably a little bit because you don't see much of the neck over here, and you see a lot more of the neck on this side. So we're going to say that's where that goes. And this one comes about here, but then we're going to make it at an angle. And you see the breast of that bird is a little rounded. You could even put an oval in there if you wanted to. And I can see that that neck is a little bit too wide. And sometimes you take measurements and they don't look right, and you go to fix them, and actually your measurements were pretty right on. But because the neck comes in a little farther, and you notice, you see how the angles that I'm making. And I can go back in and I can round those off. So I'm basically just getting an idea of where I want the placement for that bird. So check relationships on your paper. It's really important to get those relationships correct. And continue to check them until you feel like they're right. Now I know how tall this is, about, let me say, that wing is about 1.5 heads. So that's approximately right where I have it. And that, if you look at the beak, it's really close to the top of that head. There's not much space. So now you kind of have an idea of where the placement of that beak is. And it's very rough, and that's the way we want it. So now I'm going to check it against. See, now that we've got our head about right, these tail feathers look right. You could tell from the photograph that before the tail looked so long compared to what we had drawn for the head. So we've made the adjustments before we continue on, so nothing else is going to be wrong. And that's really important. You know, it really helps to draw your subject matter over and over again if you want to really get really good at that subject matter, because you will see something different every time. You'll notice things like I'm noticing that this head should have slanted a little bit more. And if I would have done maybe this, it's not off a lot, but it is off a little. But I'm saying it's good. I'm going to go with it. And I'm going to make a few marks where some of these shadows are on the bird. And I'm going to make a mark here because that's where the dark starts. Now, when we look at the values, I want you to check and see where's your darkest values. The darkest values on this bird is going to be the eye. It's going to be these dark spots that are on the feathers. The wings are pretty dark, but they're actually, the value is, if you really look and you squint, you can see that they're lighter than that darkest dark of your eye. And you could actually start with the eye if you wanted to. And I'm going to get a darker pencil. I don't know if some of you may be new, but pencils come in different darknesses, and you can tell by the number on the pencil. And if it's a B, it means it's black, which means it's a darker pencil. There are also H pencils, which is a hard pencil, and a hard will draw a softer line. The B pencils are going to draw a darker line. And the higher the number on the pencil, the darker that pencil is going to be. So if you want to, you could leave a little spot in the eye to look like an eye shining area. And try to get it really dark. If your eye is right, you don't have to move it. You don't have to worry about pressing too hard because we're not moving it. That's another reason why you've got to get the proportions correct before you get to this point. We don't want to have to make corrections now. I'm going to look at where this shadowy area is on the bird head. And you can see that it's higher on this side, lower on that side. I'm going to say here, and I'm going to say there. And you can actually take the side of your pencil and go ahead and start shading that in. And this is a really light area. The two light areas are right underneath the beak and right here at the tail. Everything else is a tone. And you can see how much darker it is than the white paper, so we don't make it too light. The wings are the next darkness, and the head area, shadows and values are the next darkness. And if you notice that there is a white spot right here at the eye, so you can either leave that open or we can come back in and erase it when you're done. And this is a pretty dark area. And as you press, the darker you press, the harder you press doing this. And then as you lighten up the pressure on the pencil, you go out. And you'll get a lighter area. So you can get more of a gradation this way. You press harder, then you lighten up the pressure and go out, and you've got a nice gradation. So it's not a sharp cutoff between this and this. You don't have a line. So just pressure on your pencil will make a big difference. So I'm going to press harder up here at the top, and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit around the eye. So I've got a nice gradation there. I'm going to leave this basically open with the light, but I'm going to shade on either side. And it's pretty dark down here. It's actually little spots, and you can put in some spots as we go. Like if you wanted to get a little bit darker, you can start doing some little spots. where those darker spots are. They don't have to be perfect. Just to indicate that there's some coloring and there's some other stuff going on here. It's really dark right here. So again, we can press down a little harder right here. And as you go along, I want you to squint, and I want you to look and compare those values. I want you to compare these values against that value, against this value, and just continue to do that to see if you're getting your values correct. Okay, what I'm going to do with this Q-tip, because I don't want this feather to look perfect, you could put some little points down here. And like little feather points. Then we're going to use the Q-tip and we're going to kind of blur out some of that. But we want some of them to indicate that maybe there's some little feathers there. Okay, I'm going to take my Q-tip and I'm just going to blur. I want to make it look like that wing is moving. Those wings move pretty quick, and they do look like a blur when you're looking at them. So I blurred that out a little bit. You can use your blending stick to go back into this body and blend the body in. You can go over the edge where this is to make it darker, so the body will show up a little bit better. If you have a lighter area and you want to try to keep it, you don't have to use a blending tool if you don't want to. You can learn to use the blending stick and not use it. And there is still some darks here I would like to bring in a little bit more. It's really kind of dark at the point of this little feather. And there's some little feather marks in here too, but I'm not going to get real worried about those because again, I want to blend it. Before I do that, I'm going to get rid of these sketchy marks. You still have your sketchy marks, you can take an eraser and get rid of them. As you do that, you can round out your head. We're going to blend up there too. Okay, so I got rid of a bunch of those marks, and I'm going to blend, especially down here. Works out pretty good for us. We don't have to show all those little feathers because the wings are moving too fast. I'm going to tell everybody how many beats per second they have.
Hummingbirds flap their wings 10 to 15 beats per second. The record is one hummingbird did 80 beats per second.
You still have this little white area around the eye, so I'm going to try to leave that. I don't want to blend into it. I want to try to leave it white. I'm not taking my blending stick all the way over to the eye on that side. Once you blend and then you look at it, you can come back in and you can add more detail. You can add more spots. You can make it darker, lighter. Squint your eyes to see what your drawing needs. Again, values are one of the hardest things a lot of artists have trouble with. Seeing values is not easy. It can take years to figure it out, and I still have issues. And I can see there's a really dark area where this beak comes into the head. And it's really dark right up here. So now that you're at this point, you can see where you might need to fix your values a little bit. If you don't have enough spots on the head and you really want to put those spots in, go ahead and do some more of that. So you can continue your blending down in here. It will add some darkness when you blend. So your darks actually get darker. And then you can see how dark we thought the feet were. But now that I'm blending, I see that those feet could even be darker.